In my last video, I showed 3 beginner openings that are very easy to understand for beginners. So now I'm going to show what to think in an opening and what are some rules, not chess rules that you have to obey, but like some kind of tips that every chess player should know. So rule/tip number 1 is develop all your pieces except for the rook and queen by move 10. And why you should do this is because if your knight and bishop just stay here, like what's the point of even having them in the opening? Like they're not gonna do anything on these squares. So the knight and bishop you should try to get out pretty early. But with bishops you have to be careful of them being trapped. So you don't want to move them too far, like b5. But there are sometimes some exceptions if you know how to play the Rye Lopez. And knights they can pretty much go anywhere. Like for a knight to get trapped in opening, it's like I don't know. I mean, it's like Earth having an alien invasion or something. I mean, it's not possible pretty much for a knight to get trapped in an opening. So knights just you move to c3 and f3. There are other exceptions like e2 and d2. That's more advanced, not beginner-ish. So knights you should just develop to c3 and f3 is what I recommend. And bishops try to go not too far, like squares like c4 or d3 or e2. Same with the black bishop or with the black and white bishop as black. So you have to develop those pieces, but you have to be very careful to not develop your rook. Because unlike the bishops who can squeeze out in a position because they can go diagonally, the rooks can only go um 4 directions max a lot of the time, 3 or 2 directions, and they're so easy to like trap because of the way they move that you should really not move them too far out until endgame, just because around a lot of pieces the rook can't squeeze around as well as a bishop can or a knight can. So rook, you want to keep it on your back rank, or if you really want to or need to, you can move it somewhere else in your territory, but don't try to move too far into your opponent's territory unless you see a mating pattern if you're attacking against your opponent's castling. And I'm just gonna quickly show like what developing your pieces looks like as white and black. As I mean, you just do stuff like this. You just randomly move your minor pieces out. That's what knights and bishops are called. And I mean, yeah. Wait, not there, not there. This, like this, and let's see, this. Like this is what a developed setup looks like. You know, you have all your minor pieces developed, and they're all doing something. This bishop isn't doing like too much. It's kind of closed in, but it's defending your knight. And after this pawn goes further, it will be doing something. As long as it's not a starting square, you're fine, honestly. And this bishop's pinning the knight. The knights are just kind of like gaining center control, and nice pawn structure too. So this is what kind of a developed position would look like. You just you know, this isn't like all there is. There's also like there's also like other positions, but the most you'd never do this in a real game, but like what's considered to be a normal principle or opening is just really, really casual stuff. Um, I mean, 1 second. This is it. You usually don't want to do this because your bishops are kind of tied in. Like this bishop isn't doing anything, this bishop isn't doing anything. You want to have your bishops doing something, but this is an idea of what you would like, because as long as this pawn moves up, eventually this bishop will be doing something, and if this knight moves, then the bishop will be doing something too. So this is a thing in developing like position 2. It's just not exactly what I recommend, but the point is just get all your minor pieces out before move 10 likely. That's an important thing to say. Like you try to do all this before move 10-ish. It's in some positions it's okay to do it like 12 or 13 or 11, but those are pretty rare positions unless you're looking for exact line. So yeah, that's how you develop your pieces in chess. The rule slash tip number 2 that I'm going to share today is castling before move 10. A lot of people think like, bro, why is castling a thing? I mean, my king is fine in the center. He has all his minor pieces defending him, his queen, his homes, or whatever you call these little soldiers. Like, what's the problem? But really, like, there's chances of smothered mates. It's just your king's not as safe in the center as it would be in a position like this. No, not that. 1 second. In a position like this, like here, like. What's the problem? The king is defended by his 3 soldiers. The knight's just like a what, like just looking for stuff to take. The rook is there in case of anything, like if a piece gets into the territory, and it's just really safe. But it's not as safe in the center when the bishop is here on f1 and the king is literally just stuck, forced to do a bomb cloud if it's checked with no blocking ability. It's just not safe to be in the center. And you usually want to do it after all your pieces are developed, because first of all, it's kind of hard to castle when your pieces are not developed, because to castle, your pieces can't be in the way. And your other pieces, I mean, you might as well have them out, because when you just castle, don't get me wrong, there is still a chance to get attacked by your opponent. But when you have all your minor pieces out before you castle, then for the most part you're fine, and they'll have no chance to attack you. Like if you're not castled before move 10, because to attack you they need their minor pieces out, and before move 10, it's kind of rare for them to have all developed pieces that are striking and doing stuff for their good. So yeah, that's just a tip. By move 10, you would like to castle. That's an important thing in chess. The last rule slash tip that I'm going to share with you today is don't move your queen and rook out too early. This is just because the rook, first of all, like I mentioned earlier in this video, it can't squeeze around as well as the bishop or knight, because it can go really obvious directions. At max it's 4, don't get me wrong, I know math, but it's usually 2 or 3 directions that it can go when it's around pieces. And in the middle game, there are so many pieces on the board that, it's kind of hard for the rook to move around, because in chess, no piece except for the knight can jump over pieces, so for the rook to get around, he needs to take the piece in its way. And for it to take every single piece, by the time it takes all the pieces, the rook is gonna be trapped. So you don't want to move it too far out of your territory before you get into like slight end game. It can be a middle game, don't get me wrong, like if you want to attack your opponent, but that's only if you have like a strict mating pattern in sight, or if you see that there aren't many that your opponent doesn't have many pieces to trap your rook with, and your rook just has a lot of space to move around, then fine. So that's just how you usually move your rook. And the reason you don't want to move your queen around, sure, because it can move like a bishop, it can also squeeze around, but if your queen gets too far too early, then it can just get really annoying, because although it's a really strong piece, you can squeeze around like a bishop and a rook, but it's because of how many squares it can go, your opponent will pay attention to the queen, how it can attack, and if they find like a kind of counter attack to trap your queen, then you're screwed, because your queen is your strongest piece and you really don't want to lose it. If you see like if you see an attack and you can see well that your queen isn't gonna get trapped, then fine. But just, I don't recommend it at a beginner level, because to see that it won't get trapped like 100% if you play well, it's just really difficult at a beginner level. And this video is more for beginners, so just why, you can just keep your queen safe. And if you really don't like having your queen on d1 or d8, Then there's some other lines in the London and Rye Lopez and other lines that you can move your queen to b3, where you just, pressure this square, pressure that square, and your queen's not, it's still in your territory, so it can't really get trapped. Same with a4. A4, it's not great because your queen isn't defended, but technically you're still in your own territory, so you can't really get trapped too easily. And there's an opening here, queen h5, which I shared in one of my other videos, that, if you're not above the rating of like 700, you should not really try, because it looks like, why not? I mean, I'm not even two in his territory. It's so easy to get carried away with this opening. I mean, sure, the actual trap is nice, but like here takes the rook. And I mean, as a beginner, it's really easy to get your queen trapped from this position. Even though, I mean, like, this is a possibility, and your queen, I mean, it just, as a beginner, it can get out. Like, I'm not saying after you take the rook you're screwed, but as a beginner, it's kind of hard to figure it all out. So I just don't recommend playing openings like the wayward queen attack on h5, just because it's kind of risky as a beginner. What I recommend is what I shared in my last video, Rye Lopez, Caro Khan, and the Italian. But if you want to get your queen out to like b3, the London is a great opening for you. Great opening. I mean, yeah, nothing wrong with London. I mean, nice opening. And yeah, the point is you get your queen to b3, develop your other pieces somewhere, it's just a nice position. And the point of queen b3 is if they don't go d5 back, you attack this pawn, you attack this pawn, in case this pawn would actually be really weak since you then attack the knight with check. But it's just a nice move, queen b3. So I'm not saying don't you move your queen at all in the opening, but just try not to get too carried away with how you're moving your queen and rook in the opening. So yeah, that's the 3 opening rules/tips that I'm going to share with you today. Hope you enjoyed.